just for the sheer pleasure of scaring the crap out of people stopping by at Halloween. Who's ready for some origin stories? Please welcome to the stage, owner of Sinister Point Productions, Jeff Scheffelbein. Special effects technician at Knott's Berry Farm, Jacob Larson. Owner of Reign of Terror Haunted House, Bruce Stanton. Owner and creative director of Fear Farm, Rick Boker. Experiential writer and director, Ted Doherty. Creative director and executive producer of Universal Studios Hollywood's Halloween Horror Nights, John Murdy. And your host for this panel presentation, co-founder and creative director of Midsummer Scream, Rick West.
How you doing, everybody? So I brought some friends. Do you approve? All right. So we're gonna blast through this thing because we've got a lot of ground to cover because there's lots of bodies up here, living ones, I will add. We all know what these guys do pretty much current day, but I thought it would be really cool to delve into their origin stories. How do you guys feel about that? Is that cool? All right. Then away we are gonna go. We're gonna start with Mr. Jeff Scheffelbein. How you doing, Jeff? That's a lifetime ago, right?
Yeah, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, it was. Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you do these days, but then immediately bounce into what got you into the whole Halloween thing and how did your haunting start?
It's a lot. What am I doing today? Well, right now, this October, I'm working with Creep to bring everyone the new Ghosts production with CBS, so that's happening. So we're putting that together. That's going to be a lot of fun. And a lot of other small productions. We're getting ready to open a new themed speakeasy. We've already got a themed speakeasy in Montclair that we opened last year. So yeah, things have been a little hectic and busy on that realm. Still running and operating the Ghostly Retreat, the Haunted Mansion Airbnb. If you guys haven't checked that out, it's here in Fullerton. It's incredible. It's a lot of fun. And then what else? Going back now? Is that what we're doing?
Let's talk about in the beginning.
Oh God, in the beginning. Well, here, let's see in this picture, that is a 36-foot spinning tunnel that I built in my front yard, my parents' front yard, when I was 15 years old. The neighbors hated us. Yeah, and this was actually, there were so many more pictures, what happened was devastating. I remember this specifically. We had a huge windstorm, and everything then, I was using drywall for everything, and this big windstorm came and just demoed everything. We came out the next morning, I was crying, and everything was all the plastic was ripped and down the street, and all the neighbor kids, everybody came over, and everyone was help patching everything back up together, and everything.
And Halloween, everybody had your shit at their house, right?
Yeah. It's like, keep your shit on your lawn, not mine. Yeah, and then it just grew from there. When I was 18, I opened my very first commercial haunted house, rented a warehouse space, and I remember my uncle loaned me like 10 grand to get started and sign the lease, and I think that's that picture. That's my very first commercial haunt up in the corner. We were charging $6 for admission, right? We're hoping that comes back. We'd all be out of a job. But yeah, we were doing that, and that was the beginning, man. That's when we started. It was nonstop since then. When I knew that's what I wanted to do, and it exploded, and it was so crazy back then because conventions and Halloween, there was no such thing as this. Yeah. It didn't exist. Right. So if you saw anything or a prop somewhere, it was amazing. Like, oh my God, where did that come from? Who made this? It wasn't accessible as it used to be. but now it is, and I mean, the thought that, and the idea that everybody can do this now, it wasn't so hard back then, and now we have everything we need, props, lighting, sound, special effects, like, you know, and it's just so cool, and the creativity level and everything has come so far, and it's given the ability for people to do amazing things. And even for me, I mean, I am so out of it now, and I come and see all this stuff now, and I see what people are doing, I'm like, God, I'm glad I'm like not really doing this too much anymore, because I cannot compete with this shit. Like, you guys are like setting levels like above and beyond. It's amazing. Yeah, these pictures are like, some of that's from the Airbnb, and then I think that's your picture, Rick, that you took. That was one of my haunts that I did. But yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's a tough ride. I mean, it's not easy. It's been very hard. I mean, it's like gambling. I mean, some years you're doing a haunt and, you know, you come out and you think you're just like, back in the day, like we were rich, you know, I was like, oh my God, I made $30,000, you know, as like a 20-year-old, you know, in like 2 or 3 weeks. And it was a different time, but things have gotten tougher, but it's been a great ride, and I love doing it, and I hope I never stop.
How many people grew up going to Sinister Point? Yeah, there we go. Loved it, and thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Oh, yeah. He sent me that, I was like, I know exactly what the title picture is going to be for Jacob. So Jacob, when did you get bitten by the Halloween bug, and when did you decide, I'm going to be more than just a casual fan of this stuff?
Well, I mean, I grew up like in the haunt family. I mean, my dad moved into our house in 1999, started the haunted house, and then I was born in 2004. So I mean, instantly I was thrown into acting. He was constantly making positions for me that I could go scare, and then that would go to, okay, well, now try painting this technique, or build this, build that. Yeah, and I just grew up doing that. I always remember going to the fair too, and like that spooky dark ride that would be there that like had nothing in it. It was like not very great, but I would get the unlimited span and just go on that all day. That was like my favorite thing. But yeah, I just always had a love and appreciation for like spooky things. Yeah, and as I continued to grow up, just began to get more and more interested in the building of them and the creation of them. So I remember in the bottom right picture, there was a drop panel that I remember building with my dad, like when I was that age, obviously. But yeah, just getting more into it, getting to create it, and then in 2020, and I would say is when I really stepped into getting more involved in the haunt. You can see that picture on the left is taken when we did Pirates Cave Origins, which was our show in 2020 when the pandemic hit. But yeah, just got involved. Just really appreciation for supportive parents and neighbors and all that, and just having a great cast of crew to support us go through the home haunt.
How many people here got to see Pirates Cave? Yeah, unbelievable home haunt, fantastic home haunt. I was blown away when I saw it the first time, and I think it's fantastic that your dad was so involved with you doing that.
Oh, 100%.
That's a blessing.
He's
That's
here today
really
too.
cool.
So,
where are you at, Dad?
Right there.
That's what we're talking about, right there.
It's all because of him right there.
Nice. So then you made a little jump. You made a jump from the old Pirates Cave to a ghost town, huh?
Yeah. So the last year we operated Pirates Cave was 2021. So in that year, we had somebody come out from Knott's who was very interested in me and the haunt that we created, and I basically called Pirates Cave like a living portfolio for myself. Got to show that off and really show what I could do, and somebody from Knott's came out, was very interested, and ended up hiring me on. And I was still 17 at the time, actually, when we were doing Pirates Cave in 2021. So ended up going through some series of meetings, and they literally interviewed me. At least they couldn't interview me because I was not 18 yet. They interviewed me 2 days after my 18th birthday, and I started in special effects.
You're making us feel really freaking old. I'm just saying. I'm afraid of wetting myself up here while you're talking.
Yeah.
I don't.
But yeah, since then I've been in Knott's for the past like 2.5 years. Been in special effects, so gotten to work on a lot of really cool projects. I mean, we not only work on Scare Farm, we work on every seasonal event you guys see at the farm. But yeah, these are a collection of all the stuff I've gotten to work on. On the left is a picture from the big finale monster you saw in Cinema Slasher last year. That was a creation from me and my team. And then the chainsaw for Cinema Slasher and all that. But yeah, I just love it. The Scary Farm was a huge event, and I would always go when I was a kid and started going in 2015 and just saw
Shut up! With the, I'm like, well, I started in 1981. 2015. Keep going, Jacob.
I know, but I was in like middle school at that time, so still pretty daunting for me at least. So sorry to everybody else up on the stage. But yeah, I remember going through Paranormal Inc. that first year that it was open, and that was the first ever like professional haunt maze I went through, and it was just completely blown away. But yeah, just getting to see that and continue to go every year, I knew that was someplace I wanted to end up. But yeah, just been there ever since and loving it. Yeah, and then doing all sorts of projects now.
That's awesome, and it's awesome that we all get to go see your handiwork. I think that's pretty badass, man. Congratulations.
Yeah.
How many Reign of Terror fans are in the audience? That's what we're talking about. Bruce, what a lot of people may not know is that Reign of Terror actually started in your front yard as a home haunt. I had never seen these pictures, so when Bruce sent them over, I was like, oh, this is gold. This is like really, really cool. And kind of weird to see the sign in a front yard instead of in the building in Thousand Oaks. So Bruce, tell us your origin story, man.
So if you've been to the haunted house, you would see that Reign of Terror arch we still use,
Yes.
and it's kind of homage to the fact that it started as a home haunted house. My stories, I think all of ours are very similar in the passion and the love for Halloween, but mine's just a little bit different in the sense that I grew up in the late 70s in Culver City, and I went through a haunted house that was someone put together as just a walkthrough where they had opened up an entire house, and I was just enamored on what they did done. And exactly like what Jeff had talked about, in the 70s and 80s, maybe there was a rubber hand or something of that nature, but none of this stuff existed. So it was the simplest of things, just I thought was so cool. I started doing a little yard display at my parents' house in the late 80s, and then I went to college and graduated from college, and it wasn't until I bought a house in Thousand Oaks in 2000 that it was like, okay, all bets are off. Let's get this thing rolling. So the fact that the basis of going through someone's home I thought was so cool, and that's what really kind of started me being able to say, okay, I'm gonna do this to the max. If you look at this one picture, you can see the front facade of the house. And it's a tract home built in the 70s. It was 1,500 square feet. The last year I had done at my house, the haunted house itself was 2,000 square feet. Because there was so much built in the garage or in the driveway, along the side of the house, in the back of the house. One story I love telling is, I was so committed to this that in my master bedroom, which was in the back of the house, there was a big slider window. Well, I built stairs to come through the window. Well, that wasn't gonna work, so the next year I took the window out and put in French doors so you could come through for the haunted house. I don't tell people that. I say, it'd be better value, easier, better access. But the reality, it was so you could come through the haunted house. So the last year I had done at the house, we went from 1 night to 2 nights to 4 nights. We did 4,400 people. We had a little clicker. And like a lot of situations, the neighbors, the city, the police, everyone was just like, we love this, but you just can't do it anymore. So the Reign of Terror really is, I'm along for the ride. I never in my wildest dreams thought it would be what it is today. In fact, I sell dental implants. That's my career.
That's another type of terror.
So that's what I do. I sell dental implants. I've been doing that for 25 years. This truly is a passion. But I think it's because of that passion that we always make sure everything is done to the best, because it's all for us and for you guys. So, Jeff talked about making 10,000. We spend 10,000 on a prop. So, and that journey has been so fantastic and so rewarding, and it's all that attention to detail. It's like, could we get away with 1 speaker? Yes. Could we get away with 5 lights? Yes. But 4 speakers and 10 lights is better. And that's just the model that we've always had. And we've kind of been going along and expanding in different facilities, but it's amazing that it's permanently set up, which is a huge advantage that we have because we work on it all year. And people ask, I mean, when do you start? You started next month. We never stop. I mean, it's the hobby, it's what we love doing. So if you've been before, you see that detail, and we do it just because we love it. And we appreciate everyone who comes through. We hope to continue to do it for years and years, but it's really been a fantastic ride. There's one picture here, the two bodies laying on a table. You can start developing connections in the industry, and people reach out. Those bodies actually came from Dexter. So if you watch the show Dexter, so it's like, their hand-punched hair, and it's just top-notch. But that's me shooting foam. I mean, I have my hand in kind of everything that we do, so I make sure that it fits our standard and the quality is there, and if it's not gonna be there, then we're just not gonna do it. Because we don't ever want someone to come by and go, it wasn't that good. So, thank you guys.
Awesome. All right.
I was so proud.
Look, yeah, you look something. Yeah.
I remember that day. I was building a tree house.
I'm sure you were. Okay. First and foremost, if you guys have been in the Hall of Shadows, Rick and his team, Fear Farm, created our entryway, Dust Ball Hollow. And I say to him every year, if only you guys could make your structures a little bit bigger, because they're hard to see, But no, Rick, he has made consistently the largest structures we have had, like every year in the Hall of Shadows for the past several years. Last year was the giant castle, you'll remember that. And then the year before that, it was the narrow, really, really tall castle in the corner, right?
Castles.
Yes, well, castles are good. And so it was a no-brainer to ask Rick and his team to do our entry portal into the Hall of Shadows this year. And if I don't say so myself, it's pretty badass, sir.
Thank you so much.
So let's talk, you reign from the high desert. Let's talk about when you started getting into Halloween and the whole haunt scene.
So, actually, it started in Chino. Actually,
Everything starts in Chino.
It all starts in Chino. Yeah. So my cousins and my uncle and stuff, they had a neighborhood where they had a lot of like trick or treaters and stuff like that going on. And we one year we did a tarp and a strobe light. That was like the whole haunted house. I think I wore a ghost sheet as like my costume, and I had a train horn. That was the only scare in the whole thing. And I was 6 years old at the time, and it's just exploded since then. Just every year it was like, okay, it's more than a porch. It becomes the backyard. Then it's the backyard, the garage, the porch. And then it's like, okay, when we moved to the property where all of these pictures were taken, we had like 2.5 acres of land. It's like a farm, like setting out there. So we started building and just over, years and years and years of stuff, it just accumulated into something that was just huge. And of course, like a lot of these other guys, like neighbors complaining and dealing with city and stuff like that, trying to be as legit as you can, but like you can't please everybody, It just grew and grew and grew still, and people were getting more. So this year we're moving to a new facility, in Corona. So we got 200 acres on a paintball and airsoft field.
That's the first time in years anybody has said Corona and gotten cheers. So that's
Poor
great.
Corona.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like a lot of these guys said, like in the early days, it was, that castle right there was made out of cardboard. Like, I'm not even joking. Like it was literally made out of
the fire marshal wasn't joking either.
Yeah, he wasn't joking either. Yeah. And that maze was maybe 500 square feet tops, and we had massive crowds just for it, and that really like made us feel like, hey, we got something here. We got to keep doing it for the community, and we kept getting more and more monsters. I think one year we had like 75 monsters like on the team. And for a home haunt, that's a lot of monsters,
For any haunt, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of monsters. So we were doing that, and it just grew. Every year we were trying to one up each other. Or last year, okay, we did that last year. Let's how do we one up it? And then we started adding things like we did a hayride. We were literally trying to pull it with a lawnmower. at first. I'm not even gonna lie. Like we had a ride-on lawnmower. Like it was a bigger one, but we put a little tiny wagon behind it to hold like 3 or 4 people in it, and we were like, okay, we broke the lawnmower, and then we bought an old Ford tractor, which we still use today. And yeah, like it's just something that's been growing.
That's great. That's awesome. And you're making the jump to further south in the Southern California region and into Corona, into the Inland Empire. So where exactly? Like you went from your property out in the desert to is it like a field, or I mean what is the property now that you're moving into?
So when we decided we were going to move, it was a tough decision because we really liked the vibe of like our place. You come up a 2-mile dirt road and everything. People always tell me, "Oh, the scariest part of your house is the
scariest part is getting there."
Is getting there, yeah.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, we want to capture that vibe, but we don't want to. We have to obviously expand and do stuff more legitimately and everything but we want to keep that vibe. So we found the place in Corona actually does have, like when you enter the place, you go through like a tunnel of trees and there's like, it's a dirt parking lot and it still has a lot of the same vibe, a lot of landscaping and stuff is there. That made it worth doing, we think, it's like, it's okay, we can bring our vibe that we've been building for 25 years we've been doing this and put it into something else and still keep the charm. That was the idea, So yeah, it's a little scary, a little nerve-wracking, but we're doing it.
Yeah. Awesome. That's fantastic. Unplug one more time. If you haven't somehow made it to the Hall of Shadows yet, make sure you go see it before we close today because it's a spectacle and it's all kicked off by Fear Farm. Thank you.
Castle pink, Rick.
What?
Why was that castle pink?
Oh yeah, that's right. I will bring that up.
This sounds like a story.
Oh, no.
Sorry,
Get this. So that castle that we were talking about, it was actually a parade float because my mom used to do pageants. Like she ran a company like beauty pageants, and we built this thing. So we painted it to be scary, or scary-ish.
The dream is gone. Sorry. Yeah. Yes. A
used to
horror
be painted.
pageant. Okay. All right. Ted Doherty, ladies and gentlemen. Ted is certainly no stranger to the industry, and everybody that's into the industry certainly has heard of Ted in one way or another. Ted, let's talk about in the beginning for you, man.
Absolutely. Well, my experience with home haunting goes way, way back. But real quick, my mom is a huge Halloween and horror movie fan. My dad, not so much. He tolerates it, but he's a professional musician, and so we were definitely raised in the world of the arts. It's my younger sister, myself, my older brother, and so the idea for a home haunt came from my older brother and my mom. My brother at the time was like a preteen. I was 6 years old. My little sister was 1 year old, and this was very much kind of a family affair. So when we think about like the great home haunts in our area of like Rotten Apple and stuff where everybody's participating, that's what this was. And so it was a full-on walk-through home haunt through my parents' home and all the way out through the backyard. My brother and my mom kind of worked out the logistics and came up with the idea of Castle Dracula, and it was theatrically driven, so way before things like Delusion and Creep, which is probably why I'm a fan of such those amazing attractions. But if you think about like the famous like independent haunts in the 70s and 80s of like the Campus Life haunted houses and the JC haunted houses, a lot of them had like an in-character host who would guide the small groups through the house. That's what this kind of was. Now, we didn't take a lot of photos of any of this stuff. It didn't occur to us. So like something like Jacob, you've got like videos, you've got like all this stuff.
Jacob's got digital pictures.
I know. I took photos of your home haunt. So what we saw here is pretty much what we got. My mom made this rad flyer that went out to the neighborhood.
I love that.
Yeah.
Dude.
It's fun.
That you have that still. How cool is that?
I love it.
That's
Hooray
so
for my
neat.
Mima. Yeah, and so this went out to the neighbors. One of the neighbor moms greeted guests at the front of the driveway. Small groups of guests went up to the front door, rang the bell, and my brother answered the door, and he was Quasimodo, and he was quietly inviting everybody into Castle Dracula into the first room, which was the dungeon, which was my parents' living room. And he's having everybody be quiet because he didn't want to wake the master, because right there, asleep in his coffin, was 6-year-old me, the star of the show. And so I was pretending to be asleep in my coffin, which was actually my parents' sofa. So everybody kind of tiptoed past me into the hall, into my little sister's room, which was decorated to look like a witch's kitchen. And that's where my mom was, as dressed as a witch, cackling, engaging everybody. My little 1-year-old sister was in her crib, and my mom decorated that to look like an oven. So she's cooking the kids. She's threatening to cook everybody. And so she shoos the group away by throwing Halloween candy at them. So everybody's frantically like picking up Halloween candy, and then they're led into Frankenstein's laboratory, which was the dining room. And so there was a body on the slab, which was the dining room table, with a white sheet and lab equipment. Dr. Frankenstein was a neighborhood friend. He engaged with the guests. So that ultimately, Quasimodo led everyone into the backyard where my dad was waiting, and he was dressed as a gravedigger. He was holding on a leash our family dog, Easy. She was awesome. But he's also holding a fishing line that was rigged to the tree, and at the right moment, he would drop a ghost on everybody, so everybody flipped out. And then Quasimodo led everyone to the rear portion of the yard where the shed was, and that was decorated like a fortune teller tent, and that's where my wonderful Auntie Wynn was there. She was serious as Zelda, invited everybody in to read fortunes, and it kind of got quiet, intimate, reading their palms or whatever, and then out of nowhere, bam, on the side of this metal shed was Count Dracula. 6-year-old me scaring the crap out of everybody, furious that you're in my castle, now I'm gonna kill all of you. And so Quasimodo just yells, run! And so I chased everybody out the side of the house and into the front driveway, and that was our home haunt of Castle Dracula.
I love that. I love that so much. Okay, so then after the extravaganza that was Castle Dracula, Ted grew and got older and started getting into different things into the industry. How did that progress for you?
Well, we only did that home hunt 1 year because, as any home hunter knows, I mean, it's a lot of work, and so most of the family kind of checked out at that. But once I got more into my pre-teens, I was doing more of like traditional yard displays with like tombstones and bodies and like lighting, and cheesecloth is kind of my like best knockoff of Knott's Scary Farm. But then eventually, I didn't transition until much later on, once I became a monster, many years later at Knott's Scary Farm, and then kind of worked my way up there, and then wrote a book about Knott's Scary Farm, and then and eventually got to work with some great people here in the industry, and get to do things like the Lionsgate maze in the Hall of Shadows. Anybody check that out? Yeah. So yeah, that kind of brings me up to date.
Yeah. I just got to point out some of the most iconic mazes in recent years at Knott's Scary Farm, which would qualify as ever at Knott's Scary Farm, Ted has had a hand in. Origins, the 50th anniversary maze, like amazing stuff. And I'm sure there are a few people in here that have your book. Yes? Yeah, so really good stuff. And tell me just a little bit, tell all of us actually what you did at the beginning with the Lionsgate project here.
The what?
The Lionsgate thing.
Oh, yeah.
That little thing in the Hall of Shadows.
Yeah, so I do a lot of work with Plague Productions and John Cook, and so we teamed up with Lionsgate, and they're a great team of people, and really kind of went over their library of like really amazing movies, horror movies, and we kind of whittled it down to what we kind of thought was the best, and it was a collaboration of doing like Saw and like Cabin in the Woods and the upcoming Crow movie and stuff like that. So really kind of working on all of that, and well, you know what it's like to bring horror movies to life, and a thing or two about that. He's dabbled in it. So it was pretty much like that, just working closely with those folks and kind of working every step of the way, making sure everything was on board, and had a lot of fun working with a great cast that we've trained really well, and I think it's been well received so far. So
Have
we're
you guys
really
done the Lionsgate maze? If you haven't, make sure you do it. We didn't get to say our welcome to everybody yesterday, so what I was going to say then is that the Hall of Shadows in itself, these home haunters and the pro hunters, really just bust their asses to bring these haunts to Long Beach every year. And last year when we had Wicker Manor from Colorado, I was like, well, that was crazy. That'll never happen again. And then suddenly here we are a year later where the Lionsgate project was in partnership with Plague Productions. And it was designed and fabricated in Georgia and then packed up onto 2 semi-trucks and trucked 2,000 miles across the United States here to Long Beach, just for you guys this weekend. So that's really special, and we're very, very proud of that. And thank you, Ted, for having a part in that.
Thank you. And Jacob helped us out big time too.
Yes, he did. He was in there building stuff.
I got to do the special effects for it, so yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So great. All right. And here we go. So we've heard for years. You have referenced that you started, as a home haunter, but then that's kind of it. It was just like the tease that kind of went on for years. So now I have you here, and I thought it would be great. Everybody wants to hear John's origin story, right? All right.
That's the makeup. Okay, so I'm going to start with the picture in the bottom corner. So 1977, I was 10 years old, and a movie called Star Wars had just come out that summer. And I'm trying to remember why we did this, because it's the dumbest idea ever. Like, let's take Star Wars and make a haunted, home haunt, a haunted house. But is anybody alive when Star Wars came out in the audience? Okay, I don't know. For any of you that, like, today, if you grew up with Star Wars, you'd be like, oh, Star Wars is so huge, and there's, you could buy just about, anything you can imagine with Star Wars on it. That wasn't the case in 1977. That movie was passed on by every studio in Hollywood. They made a deal for the Kenner, the action figures, but they couldn't bring them to market on time. Do you guys remember this? You had to actually, you sent them money. I still have this somewhere. And they sent you an IOU. When we make these toys, we will send them to you. But you couldn't buy costumes beyond, I think Ben Cooper might have had, the little plastic masks with the rubber band. But we decided we wanted to do a Star Wars, home haunt in 1977, so we had to make everything ourselves. And I think my brother Dan is here somewhere. He's C-3PO. He's over there. I'm the sand person. So that mask was made out of chicken wire with burlap, and those are Dixie cups with silver contact paper. I couldn't see shit. Imagine looking, and I was chasing Dan with that. I think that was a rake where I took the end of the rake off, and Dan was C-3PO, and I was chasing him around, trying to whack him with a stick. And we had this guy who was really into Star Wars, who was a friend of ours, who built a whole Darth Vader costume, and he built lightsabers. And he used vacuum tubes, and he melted the ends of them, and he screwed them onto a flashlight with a little gel. And he also had, this is 77, so synthesizers were just in their infancy. He had an early synthesizer. So the thing that was ridiculous about this is he had to fight my brother Dave, who was Luke Skywalker. He had to do the classic fight, but he had to work the synthesizer to make the sound effects. So he's got one hand going, pew, pew, choo, 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 and he's got the other hand doing this. It was really more like a show. You came into the entrance of our house in Hacienda Heights where we grew up, and people came in and they saw this maybe 5-10 minute show, and then they left. So the next year I went to my dad and I was like, okay. So it's August 1st. You can't park the car in the garage, And we started, with my brother Dan, we started taking over more and more of my parents' house. I think the biggest picture is the last year we did it. So, because we only did it 4 years, and it was 1980, and I was jumping out of in the bathroom, I was jumping out with a butcher knife. So I just went to, well, let's see, I need a butcher knife. You were mentioning this, you guys were all mentioning this back then. Jacob, you weren't, because you weren't alive. But, but you couldn't buy anything back in those days. And you know what I'm talking about, Bruce. You couldn't buy a rubber knife, so I just went, oh, there's a butcher knife. So I had a real butcher knife. My friend was running around with a real axe. We all had real knives, and we were going through the whole house. And into the garage, we built a pit and the pendulum, and then in the backyard, we built a black and white checker room with a strobe, that old classic haunted house, and then it was around the backyard that I dug up my dad's whole garden to build that graveyard. And my dad was sitting there, and there was like hundreds of people lined up, and because it became a big deal that we did these haunted houses. And I was standing there getting all ready to go, and I had a butcher knife, and my dad looked at me, and then he looked outside, and he went, "We're gonna be sued. you can't do this anymore." And that's when he finally shut it down. But my grandmother was always a witch, even in the Star Wars, she was a witch. She owned her own witch costume, which she's long, passed away back in the 90s. I've never understood why she owned a witch costume.
Mine too.
Did she?
My
really?
grandmother always owned a witch costume. She was a witch every year, no matter what.
Where was she from? Like culturally, was she like?
Italian. She was from.
Okay.
She was from Italy. Yeah.
My grandmother was from. Her family was from, I think, Transylvania. Honestly, her maiden name was Zaleski, and she was definitely Hungary, Eastern Europe, but she didn't like giving kids candy. So she just scared the crap out of them. So at the end of the night, no one ever had any candy. She would sit there and scare, and when we were kids, like when I was like in elementary school, we'd come home and we'd go, Grandma, and it was like, you couldn't find her. And then she would jump out of a closet dressed in like one of my Universal Monster masks, usually like Quasimodo again. And she would chase you out of the house, down the street, around the block. Like, she didn't stop. And she did this like every single day. So,
This is why we have Halloween Horror Nights.
Yes, that expensive. But it was all neighborhood friends, and my dad finally just said that, hey, we can't do this anymore, and shut me down. So the next year, somebody called my parents that was doing, I don't know if you call it a pro haunt, it was like for charity. It was in the Whitwood Plaza shopping center in Whittier, and it was like in a store. And they called my dad, and they're like, "Hey, is your son that kid that, could we borrow him?" And I was 14, maybe 15. So I did my first, it wasn't really professional, but I did my first haunt when I was, I guess, 14 or 15 years old.
All right. And then things kind of progressed for you. And that brings us to present day. How did you go from the mall and being borrowed by folks to running probably the most popular and well-known large-scale haunt in the world?
I was in college, and I was a theater major. I was an acting major, and then I got into writing, and I started producing my own plays in college. But right when it was getting towards the end of college, one of my buddies went to Universal Studios Hollywood and auditioned to be a tour guide. And he was like, "Hey, you should come, be a tour guide." And so I went, okay. And so in 1989, I auditioned to be a tour guide. And only after working there maybe 2 years, they were looking for a production assistant or a gopher to work on the whole downstairs of the theme park. So the Starway escalator, but specifically for me, and it was before E.T. was even built, it was the old special effects show, The World of Cinemagic. So I worked there as a PA on Cinemagic, and then at the end of the project, I got a pink slip, which means you're not going to work there anymore. Because it was just back in those days they didn't keep a huge staff. It wasn't like it is today. But the guy I worked for goes, "I can't hire you, but there's a company in Marina Del Rey called KBD, or Kevin Biles Design KBD Innovative Arts. They're starting up a theme park division. Why don't you go interview?" I did that, got that job, worked there 5 years, and by the time I left there, I went back to Universal in '96 to work for Universal Creative to write one freelance show, and they just kept hiring me, and eventually brought me on. So I worked for Creative for years and did, the Mummy Ride in Hollywood and the studio tour and a whole bunch of other projects. And we were relocated to Orlando in 2002 when they moved the whole division to Orlando. And then one day the phone rang, and it was the general manager of the park, and he said, "We're thinking of bringing Horror Nights back." But I'd already established myself as designing rides, and so I rock paper scissored with my wife because we were leaving to go get married in Ireland that day, and I said, "Okay, let's go, rock paper scissors," and always bet on rock. Rock always wins. She took rock, I didn't, and so we said, "Okay, we're going to do Horror Nights," and it was literally decided by rock paper scissors.
How many home haunters or people that decorate their homes and kind of think, well, one of these days I'd like to do a pro thing? How many of you are here in the audience? So you guys are out there. We see you. So I'd like to go down the line just real quick, and if you could pass on, words of advice, and they can't be "don't do it." That's
Damn.
Yeah, no. I saw your face, and that was it. What would you tell people that are embarking on their own journeys? What would you suggest they look out for, things that they strive for, and things that have helped work, on your journey as well?
Things are changing so quick. So, just over a matter of the past 10 years, I think things have gotten tougher doing pro haunts. City regulations, the cost is astounding. Everything, there's so many challenges now, but I think ultimately is, if you're creative, be you, and do something that changes everything. And we're seeing that more and more every day. Back in the day, it was, everybody did haunts, and they all had their skeletons hanging, and they all had their, their cut off hands, and their da-da-da. But now, everybody is doing something different, and just keep doing it. Just keep changing the game, and you will be successful. And I think that's what you gotta do.
Awesome. Yeah.
For up-and-coming home hunters, the cheap lumber section in Home Depot.
Amen.
Lumber's expensive nowadays. But no, home haunts are a great way for you to just learn lots of different areas of what we do in the industry. All the different production crafts, the creative end. So get involved with the haunt. If it's not in your will to start your own, maybe ask somebody in the Hall of Shadow, "Hey, can I be a part of your haunt?" Because I'm sure they'll say yes. They always need hands, trust me. Ask Rick's too. We always need hands to put these productions together. So go out there and get your hands dirty, find what you like in what you're doing out there, and you'll find what you really want to hone in on, and one day you may end up here on the stage with us. So yeah, you never know.
The passion behind it is definitely going to be key. Obviously there's a ton of passion up here. Bigger is not better, flat out. Do something that's within your control. We got our start. Like I said, it was a home haunted house, and the city basically came to me and said, "We love what you're doing, but you can't do it anymore for all these reasons. But we would love for you to do it for us. So we're going to provide you a space." So for 12 years of a professional haunted house, I didn't pay a dime in rent. Now, we live in California. That is unheard of. But that's because there was a partnership. There was a value that we were able to uncover. Most people may not realize this, but we're a nonprofit haunted house. We donate our money towards the city. We've now transitioned over to a lot of animal rescues and stuff like that, but we're giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to different charity events because I love doing this. And I truly think that model is still available for someone else to capitalize on it. The key is you gotta make sure you keep control. Don't get involved with a committee. Don't get involved with someone where this person's going to do this or this or that. That's where you're going to go south. It's your passion that's going to make all the difference. But like I said, I think that the model is successful because it is incredibly expensive in California. Advice would probably be don't start a house in California.
If you want to be scary, put your grandma on the porch with a witch costume on, right? There's the. No, like for real though, if you want to do this, love it first and find ways to keep loving it. Find new things, new avenues that keep you just inspired to just be the best that you can be. Because if you get bored with it, you're going to see it in the quality of your attraction. And that's kind of always been our motto with our team, you know, and be really grateful to all the people that help you and stick by you and stay with those people. And yeah, that's what I live by.
Well, for me, I guess my 2 cents would be, you're in the right place. Growing up, we did not have a Midsummer screen. We did not have things like that at all. Like you couldn't go to school and like major in themed entertainment and stuff like that. You know, so I think there's so many opportunities here for you to learn, to educate yourself, kind of find out what works, what doesn't. Jacob, kind of like what you're saying too with Rick's too, as well as like, I mean, it's just, there's so many opportunities in the Hall of Shadows just to be able to go in there and be inspired and kind of see what people are doing, and you can kind of try to implement some of that stuff at your home and just try to develop it. The main thing that is definitely going to be the constant is the passion and just to care and really kind of, for me, it's always just been really like you almost have to become obsessed with it and just drive to get it done and just do the very, very best that you can, and that's all you can do, and just keep loving it.
Common thread, you've heard a lot of people say this, passion. That's like so important. You have to find the passion in everything you're doing, or there's no reason to do it. But as far as advice, I'm going to go back to what my father told me when I was just, getting out of college, really. And my dad is, he was a businessman. He didn't have a creative bone in his body. And he didn't know what to tell his kooky son or any of his sons, because my brothers are musicians, He didn't know what to tell us, but he told me something that was extremely valuable that I have since told countless people that I've met at places like this or at the event, and that is, whatever you're doing in life, no matter what it is, do it to the best of your ability. You could be flipping fries at McDonald's, be the best damn fry flipper at McDonald's. And the reason is because quality rises to the surface. That's how you get noticed, and that way people will recommend you for something else. Now, when I look back at the entire trajectory of my career, I can find a million examples of that. When you're going through life, you're going to find that there's these moments, these forks in the road, where you can turn left or you can turn right, and it's going to make all the difference. But you're not going to know it at the time, right? You're only going to know it through hindsight. But every step of the way, I mentioned I got a job. I thought, I'm a production assistant. Oh, I'm not. Here's a pink slip. But the guy I worked my ass off on that project. The guy who worked for me recommended me for the next step. That guy ended up being at Universal, who hired me back when I needed to get back to Universal. So every single step of the way, it was because somebody recommended me. And there's kids that I met at the Horror Nights when they were with their parents, when they were 10 years old or 12 years old or 14, and I've told them the same thing. And those are the people who are now working for us. Those are the kids who made it, because they took that advice to heart, and no matter what they did their absolute best, and they did it with passion.
So I've had the absolute pleasure of knowing each of these guys up here, in some cases for decades. And I've been as supportive as I could have possibly been over the past umpteen million years that I've been involved with haunts and haunters, and it never gets old. And I'm always proud to see up and coming haunters really spread their wings and take off. And I love cheering on my more seasoned friends in their amazing accomplishments as they continue to just kick doors open and just kick ass in this industry and become, I mean, we are the world example of what Halloween is and what horror attractions are, and really here in Southern California, this is ground zero for that, and I've always said that, and I will always say that. And so, on behalf of myself, and of course, everybody here, thank you guys so much for what you do for us.
No, thank you guys. Because if it wasn't for all of you that support all of our work, God knows where we would have ended up.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely, yes. So, perseverance, passion, and having your grandmother with a witch costume.
That's right.
That's right. Scaring the shit out of everybody every Halloween. That's the way to do it, folks. That's our little spook show for this afternoon. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your time at Midsummer Scream. Thank you very much, everybody.
At this time, we ask that you collect your belongings and make your way out of the auditorium. Oh, and a word of advice: as you leave, step lively, making sure no unwanted ghosts follow you home. Enjoy the rest of your experience at Midsummer Scream.